Hi guys, welcome to my ranking of Donald Pleasance movies. This guy is definitely one of my favourite actors of all time. Not that I've seen every single film he's done. I mean, if you look at his filmography, there's about 100 films on there. I doubt I've seen more than about 20, in all honesty, but Donald Pleasance did lots of films that most people have probably never heard of. I'm not that interested in watching all of them, but by accounts, he was a great guy and definitely a great actor. Now, I've decided to implement a little rule for today's ranking, which is one film per franchise, and the reason I've done that is so that we don't just end up with like 6 Halloween movies and then 4 other movies to make up 10. I think it would be a little bit tedious if I was just bouncing from one Halloween film to the other today, which is what could have happened because I am a massive Halloween fan. I do love those movies. So just one Halloween film, and maybe even that didn't make it in, who knows. So what we've got here then is 10 very different Donald Pleasance roles, 10 slices of Donald for your viewing consumption. So let's dive into it, and we'll start with the film that came 10th. This is a film noir, but set in the north of England, bizarrely. Donald Pleasance only has a minor role. He plays a bookie whose wife is either cheating on him or is just generally very dominant over him. I can't remember. The main guy is Stanley Baker. He's chasing after a criminal and making a bit of a pig's ear of it. The interesting thing about the film, from my point of view, though, as a Donald Pleasance fan, is the fact that this is the oldest film of his I've ever seen. So this came out in 1960. Pleasance would have been about 40-ish, I'm guessing, around about then, about the same age that I am now. I don't think there are that many substantial Donald Pleasance roles from when he was a really, really young man or a teenager. I think he got his stardom, if you like, quite late in the day by most actors' standards. Most of Donald Pleasance's most famous roles are from when he was a middle-aged man, an older man. As for this film, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're into this type of movie. I found it to be an interesting watch more than I did to be a very good watch, if I'm honest. Not my favourite Bond film, but what I will say is James Bond and Halloween are my 2 favourite franchises of all time overall. Which actor links the two? Donald Pleasance. I can't think of any other person who has been in a James Bond film and a Halloween film. If you know of anyone else, then do let me know, although at this point I sort of hope that it's just Donald. So in this film, he plays Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Definitely one of the best things about this. He wasn't the original choice to play the part. So originally, they actually cast somebody else and started filming with somebody else, this Czech actor with a beard, bizarrely. But after a few days of filming, they realised that he wasn't that menacing. So they got rid of this guy and brought in Pleasance as a very, very late in the day replacement. I can't imagine that Donald had much time to properly prepare for this role, but typically, he knocked it out of the park anyway. He is a very, very creepy Blofeld. There are all sorts of different Blofelds in the Bond series. You know, you've got the gangster Blofeld with Telly Savalas, the drag queen Blofeld with Charles Gray, and some of those earlier ones that were hidden behind a glass screen. But Donald Pleasance's version was definitely the creepiest one, even if you'd say that he wasn't necessarily the best overall. And he gets away at the end as well on that little tram thing. The firepower in my crater guns could annihilate a small army. You're welcome. This is probably Donald Pleasance's best ever acting performance, at least of the films of his I've seen. I know Sam Loomis is his most famous character, but it's not his best performance. That comes in this, Deathline, which is a fascinating little film. Donald Pleasance is so good in it, though. He plays this cop who... He's found out that people have been disappearing down in the London Underground, and it turns out there are a couple of cannibals down there, but the way Pleasance acts in this, his mannerisms, the way he delivers his lines, he's so good. As a film, Deathline is very different from my other favourite horror film that takes place in the London Underground, Creep. Creep is more your standard horror formula, just done very well. Deathline is something very different. It's like a character drama where the actual cannibalism is a very incidental thing, but it's a really unique little film. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and Donald Pleasance, he's amazing in this. I mean, he puts on an absolute acting clinic in this film. It's something to behold. This is a war film that I grew quite a lot of affection for growing up because it always seemed to rotate into the TV schedules. I'd probably seen it like several times, even by the time I became an adult. It's not really a Donald Pleasance vehicle, this one, though. It's much more Michael Caine and Donald Sutherland. Pleasance plays Himmler, a character based back in Germany, whilst the main action is going on in England. So you've got this group of Nazis who are trying to infiltrate this village so that they can have a crack at assassinating Winston Churchill. It's not the most realistic of war films, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's probably one of my favourite Michael Caine films, in all honesty. But when I think of The Eagle Has Landed, I don't think of Donald Pleasance really. But luckily, this is a ranking about best Donald Pleasance movies rather than best Pleasance performances. If it was about performances, Deathline would be number one. But The Eagle Has Landed is really, really cool. Anyway, highly recommended if you like war films and you've not checked this one out yet. This is a horror anthology featuring 4 or 5 different stories. Donald Pleasance is only in one of them. He plays some kind of ex-army guy who has become so broke that he's having to sell off all of his old memorabilia, and he lives with his daughter, who is actually his real-life daughter, playing his fictional daughter, bizarrely. I can't remember how this particular tale comes to an end, but all the stories on this film are great. I did have to go on Wikipedia earlier to sort of remind myself of what those stories are. I have seen many horror anthologies over the years, but I do own this one. Here is my copy of From Beyond the Grave. Peter Cushing plays a shopkeeper who links all the stories together. I've seen Donald Pleasance in another horror anthology as well called The Monster Club. Now, I don't like The Monster Club as much, just the stories on that particular one, not so great. Although the only one on The Monster Club that I could sort of enjoy if I watched it again is the one featuring Donald Pleasance. But overall, I am definitely an Amicus man. I love the ones that Amicus did in the 60s and 70s, and From Beyond the Grave is right up there with the best of them. So far in this ranking, Donald Pleasance has played a bookie, a megalomaniac who lives in a volcano, a British police inspector, Himmler, and now the President of the United States. The man could turn his hand to anything. Obviously, when you think of Escape from New York, you're more inclined to picture Snake Plissken with his eye patch, but the scenes that Pleasance does get in this, he really gives it his all. I particularly like it when he hurls the abuse at the gangster towards the end, when he gets the chance to kill him, get his revenge. I don't think Donald Pleasance was in Escape from LA. I've only seen that one once, and it was a long time ago. Possibly he was dead when that one came out, actually. Another Pleasance Carpenter hookup. This time Pleasance plays a priest, so again, something completely different. I actually bought this one quite recently, and it was my first watch of the film for about 10 years. It's still as good as I remembered, but there's this really irritating character in the mix. He's like a Chinese-American kid, I can't remember his name, but all the way through the film he's just being an arsehole to everyone. He's coming out with unfunny sex jokes, race jokes. He's just an arsehole. Take him out of this film and this would be a horror masterpiece for me. As it is, it's just a very good film. I don't think Pleasance has to stretch his acting chops particularly. He's just a comforting presence in and around the other characters when everything's going to hell. But it's a very good film. I'd like to review it at some point just so I could go on a rant about this one particular character. Great soundtrack. This is one of Carpenter's best soundtracks and probably overall in his top 5 movies as well as Donald Pleasance's top 5 movies. This was a fairly recent discovery for me. I took a risk on the Blu-ray for Phenomena during my ongoing Dario Argento review series and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great, hence why it's come number 3 today. The story is about a teenage girl who goes to a boarding school in Switzerland. She has a weird kind of supernatural connection to insects and animals, and she uses this skill to help her get the better of a killer who's been offing people in the local area. Jennifer Connelly plays the lead, very young Connelly, she's very good. Donald Pleasance plays an insect expert, so again, something different for him, and it's just a very good movie. I would say it's Argento's last truly great film before he went off the rails for quite some time in the late 80s and for pretty much most of the 90s, but don't get me drawn on that. I think this film is absolutely phenomenal. That's the right word to use, isn't it, for a film called Phenomena. It won't be for everybody. It does have some degree of silliness to it. You know, you've got monkeys going around with straight razors acting as murderers. You've got Daria Nicolodi in the film, even though she's not really right for the part that she's playing. Decapitations near waterfalls and bizarre things, but it's got a great soundtrack. It's an exciting film. Visually, it's absolutely beautiful, and I really like this one. Really, really do. This is one of the films of my youth. It was also a film that me and my dad bonded over back in the day. We had it on cassette tape and we watched it several times together as I grew up. It's a film that you can just bung on a Sunday afternoon, and it seems to take all afternoon to get through. I think it's like 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 45 minutes, something like that. It's about a group of soldiers who get captured by the Germans during World War II. Not just British soldiers, it's a mixture. You've got British in there, American, various other nationalities. They get put in this camp, and throughout the film they come up with this plan to escape. So they build a tunnel underneath the camp that leads out of it. And then in the last half an hour, we see what happens when the plan is put into fruition. Some get out, some don't. It's quite bittersweet seeing the final fates of some of these characters that we've gotten to follow. You don't necessarily get the ending that you want in this film, that it's not all bad as well. It's just nicely balanced. And I like the fact that the Germans are shown to be not necessarily cruel and evil. You know, they're just normal people as well, but stuck in the machine of the Reich. They just want to get through the war as painlessly as possible. I love the main theme tune that plays in this as well. It's you can't forget it once you've heard it. And some great actors in this as well. Steve McQueen, possibly his best ever role. He's amazing as, I forget the guy's name, but the image of him in my mind on the motorcycle being chased by Germans, it's just absolutely legendary. Charles Bronson is in this playing like the Tunnel King, I think his nickname is. Now, Donald Pleasance, I was going to get to him. He plays an RAF pilot, I think, who is going slowly blind. And the part that he plays in this, it just breaks your heart, honestly. When we get to his death scene, I'm just choking up. There's many times during this film where various characters die and it really touches you. When I was a kid, honestly, there were quite a lot of times when I was bored, I would just bounce a ball against the wall and think of Steve McQueen talking to that little Scottish guy in the prison cell. This is surely one of the best war films of all time. It's a fantastic film. Pleasance absolutely makes his contribution to it, and it possibly should have been number one today, but I've got this weird sense of loyalty, I get, for the want of a better word, with the film that is number one. So let's now find out what that is. Yeah, big surprise, right? I mean, this is one of the greatest films ever made, possibly. Certainly one of the greatest horror films ever made. Despite that, I don't feel like lingering on it that long today, even though it's come number one, because I've talked about Halloween so much on the channel in the past already. This is a film which has been picked to the bone over the years in terms of analysis, whether it be on YouTube or anywhere else. I remember when I was setting my camera up to do my review for it at the start of the channel, and I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to go about this? Because anybody watching a review of Halloween has probably seen like 100 reviews of it already. I can't remember what I talked about, but obviously I got through it. I certainly would have given it 5 out of 5. But in addition to that video, I've also done not just one, but 2 different Halloween rankings. So those are 2 more times that I would have talked about the film. And then I did a 1978 ranking video for films in general. So Halloween would have been featured in that as well. So I've kind of got to the point with this that I don't really have much to add when it comes to this great, great film. It is amazing. Donald Pleasance is great in it. It is number one today. Let's just leave it at that, I guess. So I think I have one more thing to say before we wrap up. If you like, you can rewatch this video. It could be the last television show you're likely to see.